Welcome back. Right. Hope you're enjoying these as much as I am. This is rapidly becoming my favourite part of my day to do these little videos. So the next one, after we'd ended with Phoebe falling down that ravine and someone who we're quite familiar with catching her cello, we'll find out what happens to Phoebe in the next one. The next chapter is called Gingerbread People. So Phoebe had fallen down, she'd seen that character that we recognised, and this chapter's called Gingerbread People. So I wonder who Phoebe's going to meet up with in this. It starts with this picture here. Okay, Gingerbread People. Phoebe opened her eyes. She felt dizzy, and when she reached up and touched her forehead, she winced with pain. Her hair was sticky with what she assumed must be blood, but it was too dark to be sure. She sat up with a low groan. Oh, she had lost her cello. That girl with the glowing sword had it now. Phoebe had to get out of here, wherever here was, and rescue the cello. The tree magic was feared and misunderstood. Phoebe's experiences in Nightingale had taught her that, and if the cello started speaking, who knew what trouble could follow? And yet, Phoebe couldn't help wondering about the girl's sword. She had only glimpsed it, but there was something about it that she recognised. She just wasn't sure what. Phoebe decided to think about it later, when her head wasn't aching so much. Just then, a glow lit up the walls around her, and Phoebe saw that she was in the cavern of some sort. The glow grew brighter and brighter, and Phoebe saw a strange procession approaching, holding lanterns. As they drew near, Phoebe saw that there were small gingerbread figures, the sorts you've seen on bakers' stalls in Nightingale. But unlike those sweet, flat, cookie-cutter biscuits, these gingerbread figures were rounded and dumpy, with small spoons and forks for fingers, and faces that had carefully modelled features baked into them. But more extraordinary than any of this, these gingerbread figures appeared to be alive. They surrounded Phoebe, raising up their lanterns above their heads as she got awkwardly to her feet. One of the gingerbread figures stepped forward. He was a boy with large icing sugar eyes and sugar-spun hair. He raised a hand with 3 teaspoon fingers to Phoebe. "Do you want me to go with you?" she asked. The gingerbread boy nodded and clicked his teaspoon fingers together. Phoebe took his hand and followed as the gingerbread people formed a single file line ahead of her and marched through a small arched opening on the far side of the cavern. Phoebe glanced up and saw that the cavern wasn't solid, but was formed of the boulders of the Tumbledowns, wedged together. She'd fallen through the gaps between them. She ducked her head as she walked through the opening and down a winding stone tunnel that must have been chiselled through the middle of a gigantic boulder. At the other end of the tunnel, Phoebe stepped out into another cabin, lighter than the first, and far, far bigger. Looking up, she could see the sky through the narrow spaces between the boulders. The line of gingerbread people filed down another tunnel, and Phoebe followed, clutching the gingerbread boy's hand for support. She was still feeling dizzy, and unlike the gingerbread people, who were all different shapes and sizes, though none were as tall as her, she had to bend low to avoid hitting her head again. Some were tall and thin, baked dark, others were round and plump, light ginger or speckled. But there was one thing all the gingerbread people had in common. It was a delicious, biscuity, smell, warm and spiced. It made Phoebe feel safe and cosy and very, very hungry. Oh, I love a gingerbread man, me. They passed through several more caverns, and Phoebe noticed nests lodged in the crevices, and several small wooden cabins built on ledges high up in the gaps between the boulders. And once, hammocks strung across the similar gaps, with pots and pans and bedrolls hanging from them. She wondered who else, beside the gingerbread people, had made the Tumbledowns their home. I wonder who it could be. Phoebe was just thinking about this when the gingerbread people came to a halt. The tunnel they had entered was blocked by a large boulder. The gingerbread boy tugged on Phoebe's hand and pushed his way to the front of the line, and reaching out he knocked on the boulder with his teaspoon fingers. There was a scraping sound, and the boulder slowly rolled aside. Phoebe felt a blast of hot air as she stepped through the opening and looked about her. She was standing in a cavern kitchen lined with stone shelves, crowded with cooking utensils and sacks of flour and sugar, ingredients in jars, pots and bottles and firewood, stacked in neat bundles. In one corner was a large stove with a stone chimney, and a hob cluttered with simmering pots and pans. Below the hob were 8 oven doors, their round windows all glowing brightly. The kitchen was bustling with white aproned. Show you a picture there. The kitchen was bustling with white aproned bakers, stirring cake mixture, kneading the dough, washing the bowls. The gingerbread people flooded past Phoebe, and blowing out their lanterns, and stacking them neatly by the door, grabbed tiny brooms and dustpans, and began sweeping the floor. "So pleased you could join us at last," said a soft, lilting voice, and Phoebe looked down to see a small figure standing at her feet. "I'm the Sugar Spun Princess, and this is Ginger." Standing behind the princess was a huge gingerbread figure. "We know someone who will be eager to meet you," she continued with a smile. "Please, follow me." Phoebe smiled weakly. The kitchen was warm, and all the activity was making her head swim. It was beginning to feel like one of her dreams from the Great Wood. She followed the Sugar-Spun Princess and Ginger up a staircase that wound its way around the walls of the cavern until they reached a small balcony. And Phoebe saw a door in front of her with a sign on it that read, "The Flavour Library. Please knock and come in." So, Phoebe did as it said. Stop there. I wonder who she's going to meet inside. I think we can probably all guess this, but we'll find out in our next instalment. So we can see that some of our stories are starting to come together, but I wonder where they're going to take us and how, if at all, they're going to defeat the clockmaker, the rats, and the giant slayers of Bean to stop them ruining the magic. We'll find out.